I'm a 42-year-old construction manager who married my wife, Rachel, 4 years ago. Rachel comes from what everyone in town refers to as the perfect family. Her parents have been married for 45 years and still hold hands when they walk, and she has 2 brothers who couldn't be more different from one another. My wife's brother wore an identical tuxedo to our wedding, and I discovered that he had cheated on her at a coffee shop. The younger brother is Ethan, 35, who works as a freelance photographer and travels frequently. The older brother, Marcus, 44, is a high school football coach who has married Olivia, 40, for 12 years. He has 3 daughters, ages 10, 8, and 6. Marcus is what most people consider a family man. He coaches his daughter's soccer teams on the weekends, takes them camping during the summer, and works extra hours at school fundraisers to ensure his family has everything they need. I started dating Rachel 6 years ago, and on our 3rd date, I noticed something strange about her family's dynamics. He works a lot for nature magazines, photographing wildlife and landscapes, and has always been the free spirit of the family with his long hair and stories about sleeping under the stars in remote mountain ranges. He recently got engaged to Lucia, a botanist he met while on assignment in Costa Rica. While we were trying out various beers, I noticed a man sitting in a corner with sunglasses and a baseball cap pulled down. He was looking at us all the time. I pointed him out to Rachel and suggested that we might want to leave if he was following us. Rachel squinted and then started laughing, waving at the man who instantly ducked behind a menu. Rachel turned to me and assured me that there was nothing to worry about, and we carried on with our date. But it wasn't until months later, when I was formally introduced to her brother, Marcus, that I realized he was the stalker from the brewery. It appears that the siblings had a practice of attending each other's dates without introducing themselves, and this was only the first indication of the unusually close bond between the 3 siblings, as Rachel, Marcus, and Ethan shared every detail of their lives. They knew each other's banking passwords, medical histories, and relationship issues before their partners did. At first, I found this closeness charming because I come from a broken family myself. My parents divorced when I was 7 years old, and I rarely speak to my step-siblings, but as my relationship with Rachel developed, the charm faded. Daily calls, group texts that never stopped buzzing, and weekly dinners that were impossible to miss for any reason. When I was diagnosed with a minor condition, Marcus called me with advice before it even reached my father. I voiced my concerns to Rachel multiple times, but she dismissed them, claiming that I couldn't understand because I didn't have siblings who truly cared about each other. There was some truth to the statement that my brother hadn't even responded to my wedding. In contrast to most couples who quarrel over venue selections and guest lists, Rachel and I worked together flawlessly during the wedding planning process. We decided on a reasonable budget, wanted a medium-sized ceremony at a nearby vineyard, and even liked the same style of decorations. I backed off, accepting that this was part of the package deal with Rachel. When I first saw Marcus at the vineyard, I thought someone was pulling a practical joke. When I saw him wearing a tuxedo that was exactly like mine, but not the same designer, same cut, and the same boot in my ear, I thought he was playing a practical joke. Rachel was thrilled to see us standing together during her vows, and she included a special section thanking Marcus for always being the kind of I stood there listening to my bride talk about another man during our wedding vows, and the guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Olivia, Marcus's wife, was staring straight at her head with a fixed smile, and my parents exchanged glances. Even Rachel's parents looked embarrassed at the reception. I asked Rachel why she hadn't told me about the wedding reception. When I explained that I felt upstaged at my wedding, she told me that I was overreacting and that I didn't understand family traditions. The tuxedo incident clouded our honeymoon, and we argued again and again about boundaries and family involvement. Rachel finally acknowledged that Marcus had always wanted a formal wedding, but when he saw that I was wearing matching tuxedos, she looked truly perplexed by my question. Marcus had always regretted not having wedding photos and a proper reception, so Rachel had decided to share our wedding day with her brother, giving him the experience he had missed. She couldn't understand why this bothered me, reasoning that it didn't take anything. They had eloped because they couldn't afford a big ceremony. Olivia had gotten pregnant shortly after they started dating, and they rushed to get married before the baby arrived. After the wedding, Ethan apologized to me for his sister's behavior. He said that although he loved his siblings, he understood that their intimacy occasionally went beyond acceptable bounds. Olivia also texted me to offer to meet for coffee and compare notes on joining the family. Those actions meant a lot, so I decided to move on and try to make the marriage work for the next few years. Rachel worked hard to set limits with her brothers, and we decided that family calls could not be made after 8:00 p.m. Though it wasn't flawless, the rule and the weekend travel without checking in policy were a step in the right direction. Nevertheless, I never completely moved past Marcus's actions during our wedding, since I saw how he frequently interacted with Olivia at family get-togethers. Olivia seemed to have accepted her place in the hierarchy, talking over her, dismissing her ideas, and putting his sister's opinions ahead of his wife's. However, I observed how she would withdraw during family dinners, checking her phone or looking for excuses to assist in the kitchen. 3 months ago, I took a half-day leave of absence from work to meet some former college roommates who were visiting the area. We met at a coffee shop on the outskirts of town, about 30 miles from as my friends and I were catching up over espressos at the house where Marcus and Olivia lived. I noticed Marcus entering with a woman who was not Olivia. I ducked my head so that a family interaction wouldn't interrupt the little time I had left with my friends. Marcus didn't see me, and he and the woman sat in a corner booth talking intently. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language spoke loudly. She touched his arm often, he leaned in close when she spoke, and they shared food. I told myself that this might be a harmless coworker, friend, or cousin I hadn't met, but then they started to leave, and I saw Marcus put his hand on her ass as they went out the window. I watched them kiss next to their cars before they drove off in different cars. My friends noticed that I was preoccupied, so I explained that I was thinking about an incomplete project, and after they left, I sat in my car in the parking lot. I decided to follow the woman's car after she drove to a small apartment complex about 15 minutes away while I was trying to process the fact that Marcus, the ideal family man, was having an affair. I wrote down the address and her license plate number, and over the following week, I conducted some research. Her name was Danielle, a funny name, and she was a 38-year-old physical therapist who had worked with Marcus when he injured his shoulder coaching last year. Based on social media activity and coffee shop, my first instinct was to tell Rachel, but I was hesitant because the siblings had such a twisted sense of loyalty that I couldn't predict how she would react. I came up with a plan after discovering that Marcus and Danielle met at the same coffee shop every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, the days Olivia took their daughters to dance and gymnastics classes. Receipts, I managed to glean they had been meeting regularly for at least 6 months. Kyle helped me plan a customer appreciation day at the coffee shop with games and prizes scheduled for a Thursday afternoon when I knew Marcus and Danielle would be there. I finally told him that I needed his assistance to expose a cheater, and he agreed to help, probably more for the extra cash than for moral reasons, and invited the whole family to join me there for what I presented as a surprise announcement. And although Rachel was dubious, Olivia readily agreed, pointing out that her daughter's classes had been canceled that day. Rachel's parents and Ethan, along with his fiancée Lucia, all confirmed that they would attend. Marcus was the only one who declined, claiming he had work commitments. I pretended to be disappointed, but said I understood, and when Thursday arrived, I gathered everyone except Marcus and drove them to the We Arrived at the coffee shop just as the Coot Challenge game was beginning. Kyle had set up Danielle and Marcus to be chosen as contestants, and they were answering questions about each other as my family entered. Rachel became more tense as we got closer, checking her phone repeatedly. I asked if something was wrong, and she quickly replied that it wasn't, but her knuckles were white around her phone case. The last question asked how long they had been acquainted since last April, and Danielle responded. Kyle then gave them the grand prize, a gift basket and a framed picture of the two of them from a prior visit, captioning it that they were the coffee shop's most frequent Tuesday through Thursday couple. Olivia froze in the doorway. Rachel's parents glanced from Marcus to Olivia, and then back again at Ethan. Said something that sounded like a curse. Lucia tightened his hold on his hand, and Marcus saw us all standing there. His face was pale, but Danielle, who had not yet realized what was happening, smiled brightly and accepted the gift basket. Then she saw the frozen people by the door and the way Marcus was staring in horror at our group. Olivia turned and left without saying anything, and Marcus ran after her, leaving Danielle with the gift basket still in her hand. When I went outside to check on Olivia, Marcus was trying to talk to her next to her car, but she kept shaking her head and backing away. Rachel's father stood between them, his hand firmly on Marcus's chest, preventing him from approaching Olivia. Rachel's mother had her arm around Olivia's shoulders. Rachel's parents followed them outside. Rachel remained motionless, staring at Danielle with an expression I couldn't read. They were arguing fervently in low voices when they noticed me, and then they stopped suddenly. Danielle had vanished, and the drive home was silent until we got there. Rachel erupted, accusing me of purposefully embarrassing her family. I questioned why she was more worried about Marcus's humiliation than Olivia's betrayal, and she refused to look at me when I asked if she had been aware of the affair. I packed my bags and drove to a hotel. Rachel. Ethan texted me asking to meet for a drink after calling me several times, but I didn't answer. We met at a bar close to my hotel, where he confirmed my suspicion that Rachel had been aware of the affair for months. Marcus had persuaded her that his marriage to Olivia was practically over and that they were staying together for the children. He claimed that Olivia understood the arrangement. Ethan hadn't believed this story, but Rachel had decided to believe Marcus's version of events. When I returned home after 3 days, Rachel attempted to explain her actions by claiming that she had been protecting her brother while he worked things out. When I asked her what would happen if I decided to work things out with another woman, she had no response. Ethan apologized for not telling me sooner. He had urged Marcus to end the affair and tried to persuade Rachel to stop enabling their brother, but the older siblings had always stood together against him. Weeks after the family's disintegration, Olivia filed for divorce and moved the girls to live with her parents. Marcus moved in with Rachel's parents, who, surprisingly, agreed with him, stating that marriages have their ups and downs and that Olivia was overreacting. Ethan and Lucia were steadfast in their support of Olivia, frequently watching the girl so she could see her lawyer or simply have some alone time. Rachel and I only spoke when it was necessary, and we slept in different rooms. Rachel asked if we could talk 2 weeks after the coffee shop incident, and I prepared myself for more excuses or accusations, but instead she asked if Marcus could stay with us for a while. Her parents were becoming frustrated with Marcus's presence, especially since he wasn't trying to make amends with Olivia, and he couldn't stay with Danielle because it seemed like Danielle had. When I finally recovered my composure, I asked Rachel if she was serious about wanting her cheating brother, the man who had destroyed his family and was partially to blame for the current state of our marriage, to live in our home. He needed a place to stay after things broke off after the public exposure, and I couldn't help but laugh because the request was so ridiculous that laughter broke out before I could control it. Rachel looked hurt by my reaction, which only made me laugh harder. When she kept her brother's secret, Rachel revealed that Marcus had told her that Olivia was emotionally abusive and distant, which had caused him to seek comfort elsewhere. According to Marcus, Danielle had been a sympathetic ear who understood his struggles in a way that made sense, but Rachel didn't see the problem. Marcus was family. They argued, and the family stood by each other no matter what. Way his wife never had. I informed Rachel that I would only think about allowing Marcus to stay with us if he came clean about the abuse accusations against Olivia in front of the whole family. If Olivia was abusive, this should be discussed publicly so that everyone could support Marcus in the right way. Rachel jumped at the chance to call Marcus to arrange the meeting, which Olivia agreed to attend, and brought her parents along for support. The meeting was set for as the time came, everyone assembled in Ethan and Lucia's living room. Olivia sat quietly. Marcus slumped in a chair across from them, and Rachel's parents stood behind him. Ethan and Lucia served drinks, but Rachel continued to look at me anxiously. I began by stating that Marcus had allegedly experienced emotional abuse in his marriage, which he felt justified his relationship with Danielle. I then invited Marcus to explain these claims to Olivia directly. Marcus shifted uneasily and muttered something about feeling misunderstood and unsupported. Olivia watched him calmly without interjecting. When asked for specific instances of abuse, Marcus became defensive and evasive before he finally acknowledged that Olivia hadn't been abusive, but rather that he had felt neglected because she had been so preoccupied with their daughters. Rachel looked shocked that her brother had lied to her and that she had. Olivia, who believed him without question, finally spoke calmly and listed all the ways she had helped Marcus during their marriage, prioritizing his siblings and taking on the majority of child care and housework while working part-time to supplement their income while he pursued his coaching career. She also described how Marcus would disappear for hours at a time without giving her any explanation, gaslighting her when she questioned him about schedule inconsistencies. Needs over his family. By the end of the meeting, Rachel's parents apologized to Olivia. Ethan looked vindicated, and Marcus left her alone after turning down Rachel's offer to stay with us that night. Rachel sobbed for hours because she had come to terms with the fact that her brother wasn't who she thought he was, and that their family wasn't what she had always believed. 2 months later, Marcus discovered Rachel, and I started marriage counseling in an attempt to restore trust and create healthier boundaries with her family after he moved into an apartment across town and began therapy, allegedly to improve himself, before attempting reconciliation with Olivia. Olivia filed for divorce, seeking primary custody of the girls and generous visitation for Marcus. The proceedings were remarkably civil, with both parties putting their daughter's welfare first. Defended Marcus after her parents made disparaging remarks about him in front of the kids. Rachel's parents had a hard time redefining their relationship with their son because they had always held him in high regard, and seeing him lose favor made them face their part in allowing his behavior. They began going to family therapy sessions with Ethan and Rachel, notably keeping Marcus out of these sessions. Ethan and Lucia went on. The most significant change was that Rachel began individual therapy in addition to our marriage counseling, And through this work, she began to understand how her family's dynamic had shaped her understanding of relationships and marriage. Although the family drama had clouded the preparations, they chose to have a small destination wedding with only a few close friends instead of the large family celebration originally planned. She acknowledged that she had always put her brother's needs ahead of her own because that was how she had been raised. One evening, she showed me her phone and the numerous missed calls from Marcus. In what may have been the first time in their relationship, she had been limiting contact with him and setting boundaries. When he called with a crisis, she referred him to his therapist rather than ending everything. When she unexpectedly showed up at our house, I kept my distance from Marcus during this time. We saw each other at important family events but didn't talk beyond small talk, and he never apologized for the changes. Rachel struggled with guilt and occasionally reverted to old patterns. Marcus alternated between respecting and testing her boundaries, frequently accusing her of leaving him when he needed her most. Olivia unexpectedly got in touch with me after the wedding tuxedo incident or for forcing Rachel to keep his affair a secret. We met for coffee at a different shop from the one where the exposure had occurred, and she thanked me for calling attention to the affair. She said that although the revelation had been painful, it made her face issues she had been ignoring for years. She had started a full-time job where she had formerly worked part-time and was with our coffee cups empty. Olivia, who was considering finishing the master's degree she had dropped when she became pregnant with their first daughter, checked her watch and said she had to pick up the girls from their dance class. As we made our way to the parking lot, she stopped by her car and held out her hand, saying, "What you did took guts." We shook hands, and I watched her drive away, amazed at how things had changed. It turned out better than I had anticipated, and that's where I am at the moment. Thank you for reading Reddit. Writing this out has been therapeutic. My relationship with Rachel is still developing, but we're both dedicated to creating something better than what was there before. Sometimes it takes a family disintegrating for people to realize what needs to be fixed.